Hi, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are going to take another look at Mars's upcoming opposition to Saturn and its square to Uranus. So yesterday I started a series that I think I'll probably add one more video to after this one, so probably a three-part series total, taking a look at the archetypal combinations of Mars, Uranus, and Saturn. Today I want to focus a little bit more precisely on Mars opposite Saturn. You could say that Mars opposite Saturn with Uranus in the mix might even involve some of the signatures that I'm going to talk about today. But in general, I think it's also important when you're looking at a configuration of three planets to kind of look at it from the combination of all three and then break down the individual parts as well. So you have maybe a little Mars Saturn and a little Mars Uranus. So I think we're going to do Mars Saturn today and then Mars Uranus probably on Monday. So let's take a look at the real-time clock and refresh on what this transit is all about. You can see it here on the screen. And here is the planet Mars in a square with Saturn and also a square with Uranus. And if we just fast forward this a little bit, you're going to see that these planets are going to perfect next week, really by Thursday of next week, July 1st, all the way through about July 4th. So we have, about another good 10 days of this transit to come. And because it's a long, slow moving transit, and because it's also coming off from Saturn square to Uranus, which is just a huge transit overall, it's a really good time to kind of refresh on this combination and go really deeply with it. So no doubt a lot of people are going to see this transit show up. So yesterday we started this series by taking a look at some of the archetypal combinations of all three planets and some maybe general sort of spiritual lessons to keep in mind. Today, I want to refresh and do the same thing, but more with an eye for Mars Saturn. Now, this is something that comes directly from a couple of places, obviously just studying the planets over a long period of time and seeing them in lots of different charts, but also more specifically, when I think about Mars Saturn placements, the square, the opposition, the conjunction in particular, I think about the gifts, the blessings, and also some of the curses that I've seen in people's lives. Psychologically, what's challenging about this transit? What's challenging about this natal signature? And then, what can we watch for and sort of be ready for? So I made a list of 10 things today, 10 things to think about for Mars opposite Saturn. All right, so I'm just going to go through them and give you my thoughts on all of them. The first one is that Mars Saturn is really corrective. By that, I mean that if there's an area in your life, whether that area is a moral area, a case of, being your best self, or whether it's, some skill that you're learning or correcting, or whether it's a relationship, Mars Saturn will come along with kind of like a hammer and just hammering home what needs to get tighter, what needs to get, how things can improve and where you can use your will to make something better or more efficient. And so, one of the things that will come up is there can be this, because it's so corrective in nature, Mars Saturn can pile on. Now, you probably all know what piling on means, but let me give you an example that I have to catch myself with as a parent. So like, let's say that my daughter, I've been telling her, hey, don't do this, you're going to hurt your toe or something like that. And let's say that she goes ahead and keeps doing it and then she hits her toe. And then she looks at me, and instead of just being calm and sort of saying like, well, you see, you have to be really careful. That's what I was talking about. Just something kind of calm, whatever. If I'm particularly annoyed, I'll pile on and I'll go, see, that's exactly what I told you, but you weren't listening. And why weren't you listening? And, I'll pile on. And in moments where we need correction, whether it's in our own internal monologue or whether it's out in the world, if we are, most of us, when we realize we've done something wrong, very quickly, we are going to feel ashamed or a little bit embarrassed. And that embarrassment is good because it's corrective. We need to feel that. In this world, I see more and more, I see people are almost think that it's like a bad thing to feel embarrassment or shame on a certain level. And I'm not sure exactly where that comes from. Maybe it's because there are so many mechanisms in families and in different institutions in the world that where shaming is used in a terrible way. That makes sense to me. But there's also a way in which we've forgotten the corrective effect that shame has, to feel ashamed or embarrassed or a little humiliated. For the ego is a good thing because it learns how to, we learn how to become wiser. The ego learns how to serve the soul or the spirit in those moments where, it's trying to lead or dominate too much and it kind of falls down a little bit. So, but in those moments, what seems to lead into the negative version of shame is if we pile on. So one of the things that I've just noticed, during Mars Saturn transits in myself, in my clients, is that Mars Saturn people will tend to pile on, often more than anyone to themselves. They'll pile on when it comes to their own, interior monologue. Oh, you shouldn't have done this, or you shouldn't have done that, or I can't believe you did this, or see, I knew that would happen, or it's like kind of just it gets a little punitive. So the just to remember that with Mars Saturn, there can be this kind of corrective mood where you see something that needs fixed, or you realize the error of your ways, and you might feel a little bit of healthy embarrassment or even humiliation, a little bit of a healthy shame, and that ashamed feeling, that the conscience inside redirects you, and it's like, thank you, universe, I've got it. Thank you for that. And then you have to be really careful of the piling on, where and it can happen. So this is point two. So be careful of piling on, because it doesn't help. It's in that moment that we go from a nice lesson and an appropriate amount of embarrassment to feeling unworthy, or to feeling like there's a lack of dignity that we have, or to feeling like there's something wrong with us. And then correction is not fun any longer. Correction isn't joyful. We don't get to enjoy the feeling of progressing because we feel like we shouldn't have got it wrong to begin with. And how can you know until you know? So okay, so number two, be careful of celebrating other people's failures, falls, or defeats, and not even secretly. Sometimes we think withholding judgment means that I have judgments, but I just don't say them. And it's actually one step further than that. It's recognizing that we have judgments, and not only not saying them, but working on uprooting them within our mind and our heart, and replacing them with compassion and forgiveness, or even just silencing ourselves and saying, it's not my place to judge, and I'm just gonna shut up. Like, so don't celebrate other people's failures, defeats, or fall downs, not even secretly. In my life, for whatever reason, I've had the karma of having a number of teachers in my life, and I wrote about this in the memoir that I published, that have fallen down, have taken some hard spills. And I saw at different phases of watching different leaders in my life at different stages fall down, I saw people celebrating, and people saying, yeah, see, I could always see the ego. I could always see that dark side. That's who they really are. Now it's just come out, and stuff like that. Certainly we're all frail, and we all make mistakes, and it can be really disappointing. And there can be a certain degree of, justice, rehabilitative justice that's needed in such, cases. So I'm not certainly saying that we just turn a blind eye to people who fall down and commit like some, egregious sins, so to speak. But I'm talking on the more mundane level, everyday level, everyday heart and soul level. If we are in the habit of celebrating other people's failures or defeats, in the Bhakti tradition that I study, one of the things that, many gurus that I've heard speak have said over and over again is that when we do that, you have to be really careful, because you can accrue bad karma by sort of, it's kind of a version of piling on in a sense. You can accrue bad karma by taking some kind of secret delight in watching people that you don't like fail or struggle. it feels like, oh, they've wronged me, or oh, I don't like them, or and so seeing them fail or struggle, there's like a satisfaction that we get. And Mars Saturn can be like that. It can be very hard and punitive again. And so just pulling back from feeling like we have to, or that someone else falling down or struggling is like, yeah, see, they're getting what they deserve. So just be really careful of that, in my opinion, with Mars Saturn. Mars Saturn can suffer the things that it enjoys. Well, let me put it this way: when you enjoy other people's suffering, even secretly, it's very possible that you'll accrue some of that karma. Not saying that the literal person's karma comes over, but celebrating other people's downfalls means that you're not far from one yourself. That's the gist of the way I've been taught about it from my guru and from other teachers in my tradition. Another one is Mars Saturn can be incredibly judgmental. Saturn, remember, is exalted in the sign of Libra and is a very wise judge. Like Saturn is kind of, in fact, you could say Saturn as a planet kind of carries the principle of judgment in many ways. This, not this. This rises, this falls. This is good, this is bad. Saturn in Libra especially. But one of the things that we tend to do with Mars Saturn is to put ourselves into a position of strength in our mind, usually more than any literal situation, by psychoanalyzing people's motivations, their strengths, and their weaknesses. And a simple practice that can be really effective is to not psychoanalyze people or their motivations or their strengths or their weaknesses unless someone is asking you and they're a friend. And even then, I think we have to be really careful, not assuming that we know everything that there is to know. So these are like just important notes, because what I've noticed is that Mars Saturn people can also be really wise judges, like really strong executive judging faculties. But that if you're always in a position of, kind of feeling squared away in any situation or any place in life because of your ability to really analyze and judge and sort of critique where a person's coming from, how they got there, good or bad. Well, I can understand they're successful because of X, Y, and Z. That makes me feel better about myself. Or, yeah, I don't like them, but it's probably because of this, this, and this. And we sometimes think that we're really wise because of these judgments. And they're probably really accurate even. Most of the Saturn Mars people I can think of that I've done work with, are really careful and exact judges of character and of situations. But it's a good thing to like let go of the art and practice of always judging, because it can be actually kind of like a psychic defense posture that we're always in. And Mars Saturn in particular can really bring it up, and it keeps us from real intimacy with people the more we take that posture over and over, because we can't be surprised, we can't experience grace. There isn't always a feeling of flexibility and ease. We don't stay curious, and it's harder to stay in the heart and to stay connected to people in a spirit of love and compassion, even if our judgments are accurate on some level. It's almost like we have to set judgment aside to be surprised by a connection that can, pass our understanding, pass the level of understanding. This is one of my favorite phrases from the Bible is, the peace that passes understanding. And to me, there's, I, as someone with an, exalted Saturn in my chart, I have to regularly work on, I feel a judgment, I sense a judgment, I notice it and I go, that's interesting. Maybe. And one of the best words you can use with Saturn Mars is maybe. And then Saturn Mars in your head might go, no, 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 no. It's like this. It's like that. No, surely you agree. Yeah, totally see your point. Something to consider. And if you can take that inner position with yourself, it doesn't mean you're letting go of your judgments. Maybe your judgments will have served you in some way, but you can temporarily suspend them a little bit and allow for something else to creep in. Oftentimes that other thing is going to be love. Well, another one is that Mars Saturn loves to seek recognition. So a simple piece of advice with Mars Saturn is, rather than seeking recognition, even, you have to be very careful because you can do it sort of unconsciously, seek service. That doesn't mean you won't get recognized for seeking service on some level, but when you seek to do something for someone else, rather than applying your will and trying to do something that's like, see, look at what an effective, wise, careful, helpful person I am. Look at what I did, or look at what I accomplished. Look at the mastery I developed, all Mars Saturn things. When you say, how can I serve and not draw attention to myself in the way that I do it necessarily? When that becomes a conscious activity of serving and doing something that you feel is noble or virtuous, but also being careful not to draw too much. I mean, not trying to hide necessarily, want like false modesty, but, not trying to necessarily draw attention to oneself. So that's number 4. Don't seek recognition, seek service. Now, here's another one. I was thinking the other day about, I'd say, I think I told you guys this before, probably like 85, 90% of my clientele over 10 years have been women. I think women just look for spiritual guidance. I think I heard somewhere that there was a statistic that said that women were also more likely to go to therapy on their own, like willingly. So I don't know if it's, if it's that astrology is a kind of a form of therapy, or I don't know what it is, because, obviously in different eras, there were totally different demographics of people who were using and interested in astrology, probably more men in the ancient world, for example. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Conversation for a different day. Most of the people that I see are women, and a very large percent, probably 60%, come to talk about some dissatisfaction in their love life or relationships. Not a big deal. I mean, I usually, the charts have really good things to say, and hopefully it's helpful for people to talk through it from an astrological perspective. Certainly, boy, I've learned a lot about marriage and relationships by being in one, but also by talking to people every day who are struggling with their own. And I was thinking, how does Mars Saturn show up in terms of relationship problems that I hear about? And the number one thing that I wrote down while I was kind of gathering, making my notes, was what I call rant vacuums. I would say there are 2 things that I hear women complain about regarding their spouses constantly. One is anger, and the other is not sharing spiritual life. And that's it. It's that simple. It's, I struggle with his anger, or the way he expresses his like kind of his, like kind of the machismo or assertiveness, or like an aggressiveness, or, his will, or domineering, or something around anger or frustration, or something, something like that. Or the second one is going to be, we don't share a spiritual path. I want to talk about the first one. The first one is interesting because there's an even more specific complaint that I've heard more times than I can count over the years, and I call them rant vacuums. And it's funny because I recognize it myself, although it's something that I think maybe more than anything I've actively worked on in my own relationship and changed over the years has been the rant vacuums. So, okay, so what are they? And I think anyone can do this. It's not just men, but this is, again, just kind of how I've noticed it and seen it in my practice. So here's the way that I've heard it explained. My husband is really passionate about this political issue, or about people or things that he doesn't like, or, judgments that he has about situations or the world. And he'll get so intense that he'll go into like a rant vacuum, where he'll kind of just be ranting and raving about something that, and often I hear the women say this, and he's so smart, he's so smart, but I find that it's really draining. I find that it's really overwhelming. I feel kind of a little beat down by it. I feel like it's domineering. I feel like he loses track of me in the conversation. I feel like, I feel like he, unless I sort of match his passion and intensity, that he perceives me as someone who's disagreeing with him. And then he starts kind of hammering it home, and, like that. So I think that there is such a thing. And again, I'm just saying I've experienced this mostly through women talking about the problems with men in their marriages in my practice, but I could extend this to say that anyone could participate in this particular Mars Saturn dynamic, which is that we have positions in life. They become very intense for a lot of reasons: biographical, ideological, cultural, ancestral, um, psychological. And we just, you get, if you don't get me started, you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. And then you lose track of the person that you're talking to because you can't see them anymore. You can only see something that they stand for, and that it's something that you stand against. So we lose track of a person, and we objectify. We go into these, I call them rant vacuums. And I feel like social media is also ripe with rant vacuums. Social media in some ways is one big rant vacuum. Sometimes I don't even read the comments. If I make a video where, let's say that I say anything that is slightly contentious, like let's say I have an opinion, or about something, and I know that like there's probably a good amount of astrologers who feel differently about something or whatever. It's like a very debatable topic. I usually won't even read the YouTube comments afterward, because I know that it's going to be a rant vacuum. People aren't going to be seeing each other. They're just going to be talking at one another. And there's a phrase, don't try to use reason to talk someone out of a position they didn't use reason to get into. And, Mars Saturn can be like that, where it's like, let me pound my view into you until you submit to it. Or let me, kind of rant, but to the point where it becomes mechanistic and objectifying, and I lose track of other people. So be careful of that kind of depersonalizing, objectifying, kind of rant vacuum space. It's something we can actively work on by, once we feel ourselves like amping up and getting really, kind of seeing red about something, very principled, we can pause ourselves and say, who am I talking to? And then think about some things that personalize them, how their mother feel or their father feel about them when they were little babies. For me as a parent, it's like the easiest thing to help me diffuse my anger is to think about the fact that these were once children like my own children. I was once a child like my own children. I don't know why, but that's where the space that I go into to just diffuse that tendency to get into a rant vacuum, which is very dissociating. All right. Anyway, so that's 5. Don't get caught in a rant vacuum. Don't get caught thinking that not engaging in a power struggle makes you weak. There are many people who will tell you that if you walk away from something, or if you don't want to engage in something, that makes you weak or indifferent, or that if you're, kind of like, if you're not with us, you're against us. And with us means sort of struggling with us. And I'm not speaking to anyone in particular, just us being whoever, whoever is perceiving themselves as a part of some larger important cause. For example, I will often, I'll just tell some stories from social media because that's pretty easy. So like, I will find that in social media, especially in the astrological world, there'll be people who get into debates about, a technique or a method or a philosophy or something like that. And they'll say like, like, hey, have you seen, they'll private message me and say like, hey, have you seen this thread? You should really weigh in. People will respect what you have to say. And I've had times where I've been like, no, I can't do that because I know that it's going to drain me. It's not an effective use of my time, my will, my energy. So I'm not going to do that, even though I agree with you and I could see how weighing in might be helpful or whatever. There's just sometimes where it doesn't feel like the struggle is worth it. And maybe because I need to make sure that I'm not drained mentally or edgy mentally so that I can have a nice evening with my girls and I don't carry that over to them. And I know that I'm prone to doing that if I do this right before I go spend time with them. It could be something like that. So, so at any rate, then you'll get a response sometimes from someone saying, well, I guess you don't care, or you're indifferent, or well, I guess you don't, kind of shows your true colors that you're not going to get in on this fight or debate or something like that. I've had people tell me that because I choose not to watch the news, for example, which, to the day I probably die at this point, I probably won't watch the news and probably will never care what anyone thinks about it. And that's not to be spiteful or like, that's just the truth. I've realized that it's not healthy for me and it's not healthy for my relationships. It's like, it's kind of like some people might say, oh, how weak of you that you can't learn moderation with like alcohol. But for the alcoholic, it's like, sorry, can't do it. Just something I can't do. And totally comfortable to admit that maybe that's an area of weakness that I just can't handle. So, for me, it's like the news is like that. I just can't do it. And you have to know whatever your limit is. In other words, I'm not saying it's the news or whatever. I'm just using examples, but whatever your limit is, if you respect it, don't let people feel like you need to go past it to demonstrate your strength. Like, oh, you should be able to do this thing that you're saying that you don't or can't or won't do. So don't get caught thinking that not engaging in some kind of struggle makes you weak if you're very clear within that it's not a healthy struggle for you to engage in. Mars Saturn lessons. 7, seeing the best in people is a discipline, but its results do not come without practice. This is why most people quit doing it. What do we mean when we see the best in people? Well, most people reject it right away. They'll be like, yeah, I'm not going to do that because that's fake. I'm not going to walk around the world, looking at people like they've got unicorns flying out of their butt. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to pretend that Sally doesn't smell like onions and fried sausage. Like, don't tell me to paint the world purple, So, but here's the thing is that, and a number of gurus in our tradition talk about this a lot too, is that, yeah, in the beginning, when you don't know how to see the best in people, when you haven't developed that skill or ability, it feels fake. Just like when you try to dribble a basketball, you don't know how to do it. It feels fake. My daughter's going to a little basketball camp and she goes, this is just stupid. It's just like, I don't know how to do it. And I'm just like pretending that I know how to do it and I don't. And I was trying to explain to her the concept of practice. I was like, well, you don't know how to do it right now. And it does feel a little bit fake, but if you keep practicing, you certainly don't have to, but if you keep practicing, you'll get better at it. She's a Sagittarius. So she takes the challenge. She's like, oh, I'm going to get better at it. It's like very, Sag is always, I feel like Sag is always redeeming themselves from things that they initially might be critical or sort of dark or cynical about. Anyway, so seeing the best in other people is a discipline. So we're talking about Saturn, Mars as judgmental, but the other thing is that it requires discipline, Mars, Saturn, to actively pray for your enemies. Like if you want an incredibly life transforming practice, do this. And I promise you, because it's changed my life and I promise you it will change yours. At some point during your day, sit down, make a list of the people, honest to God, don't fake it, don't pretend, honest to God, the people that just get your goat. Whoever they are for whatever reasons, just write down their names on a piece of paper. Hopefully that doesn't extend beyond one piece, but just write down their names and then actively sit and pray for each person. And even if you can only make the prayer, help me to see the best in this person, help me to see something that I can use to connect with in this person so that it can replace the bitter feelings that I have with love. Try that every day. Try it for 40 days. I put this challenge to you if you're listening. For 40 days, write down a list of the names of your enemies and pray for them. And, it's going to feel a little bit like BS. Don't come up with BS reasons like, well, they dress really nice or, you know what I mean? It's not like that. Just sit down and try actively to think about positive things and to pray and ask for positive things for those people without any attachment to yourself or your judgments, it will change your life. It's a discipline that doesn't yield its fruits right away. You have to actively practice every day as often as, criticism or judgment of others come up, to replace it with praise or looking or seeing something of value. And if you can't find it, then asking that you be able to, or asking that even if you can't, that your judgments would be released. If you make that an active practice in your life, it will change your life. Your heart will open more and you become the person that you know is the better version of yourself. So try it. What could you have to lose? All right, number 8. A simple phrase that my guru teaches: it could have been worse. I might have deserved worse. If you take that attitude every time that something difficult comes up as a discipline, as a kind of martial arts of acceptance, and you say, something bad happened, that could have been worse. Thank God it wasn't. Just try it, right? Try it every single time. Because if you use your imagination, once something happens, like it's happened, and then you're either going to use your imagination in one of two ways. That shouldn't have happened. This other thing should have happened, or you're going to start analyzing why it happened. And usually you start piling on or blaming, and then, or the other thing that you can do is when something happens, you can imagine how it could have been worse and experience gratitude. Okay. So it could have been worse. And then the second one, especially when it's personal, to imagine like karmically, I might have deserved worse. Not being punitive or hard on yourself, but just admitting like, maybe that was merciful. Maybe it could have even been worse. If you keep in those practices, they'll change your life. Number 9, I'm grateful for what I've learned. What's the lesson in this situation? Now, by that, we don't mean, corrective and punitive. Just, is there, sometimes you don't know what the lesson is and you don't have to know. But if it's very clear that there was a lesson, you go, wow, that was a beautiful lesson. Thank you. And move along, and that's it. Just, what was the lesson? Thank you. Finally, number 10, show respect to all beings. This is another Mars Saturn practice that you can get into when you're talking about other people or even thinking about other people. Imagine that they're present in the room, and imagine people that rely on them or love them dearly are also in the room. Another thing you can do is to imagine that gossip about other people, harsh, punitive judgments about other people, is like hitting someone from behind in, let's say you're in like a wrestling ring and you're getting ready for the bell to sound. And before it's fair play, you just run up and hit them in the back. So just simple practice, show respect to all beings. Imagine they're present in the room, face them directly. Be very careful about how you talk about people that aren't present with you. Not that I'm necessarily the master of this at all, but this is something that I know when I'm doing this, I feel better about myself and my heart feels better and I feel happier. So these are some lessons I thought you guys would like. These are specific Mars Saturn lessons today. I hope they land in just the right place for you. You're able to embrace or adopt some of them, that they turn the wheels. I think on Monday, what we're going to do is kind of come back around Monday or Tuesday. We'll come back around to Mars Uranus a little bit for part 3. So I hope you guys have an absolutely wonderful weekend, and I look forward to seeing you guys again next week. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.